So hello everybody, I hope you can hear me online. So this is following on from trying to explain the stupa and the connection of the stupa to this building. I wanted to talk about this building, our Buddhist Center, which has now been here for 20 years. The opening ceremony of this building, I believe, was in the summer of 2003. So we've decided on July the 9th, we're going to have a celebration to commemorate that 20th anniversary. And before we were here, we were in a place called St. Mark's Studio, just up the road. And we were there since 1992. So for 10 years, and then there was a little bit of a hiatus while this place was being bought and prepared. So we're not far from the 30th anniversary of the original North London Buddhist Centre in St. Mark's Studios. And what's more, 50 years ago was the origin of the first Triratna Buddhist Centre in North London, which was in Archway, in the old piano factory, since demolished, and that was known as Pundarika. And I think it's fair to say that was the first Triratna actual Buddhist centre, apart from a community down in Croydon. That was the first actual Buddhist centre that Triratna had. So there's a lot of anniversaries happening, and in a way they are associated with North London, so we're in a very privileged position there. And at the time, when this building was found, there was a huge appeal. There were two things that were needed: money and work. So a lot of work was done, including by Kula Mitra himself. Probably other people here helped with all that. The floors were laid, the walls were done. There was all sorts of things. There was wiring being done. He can tell you all about that if he wants to. But there was also a huge fundraising appeal to raise a deposit to buy this building. And they managed, it was quite a stupid thing to do, really, to take on such a big building. But I feel so grateful for people who are stupid and reckless. Recklessness and stupidity is exactly what we need. We just need to be a little bit daring sometimes. And that's happened in many places in the Buddhist world over the years, where people have had a vision and said, let's go for that. So they fundraised, they managed to get a deposit, they got a long mortgage, and that mortgage is still hanging over us. So as well as marking our anniversary, I also want to launch a fundraising appeal for us to finish buying this building. And for that, we need £75,000. So before I say a little bit more about that, I thought I'd just ask Kula Mitra to say a few words about the origins of this building and so on. I don't know what you're going to say, but say. This is Kula Mitra, who is our president.
I'm the stupid, reckless one.
You're the stupid, reckless one.
But I prefer to think of it in terms of confidence and imagination. So I was around when we first started the North London Buddhist Centre in St. Mark's Studios, just down the road in Chillingworth Road. And as Ratnaprabha said, that was now over 30 years ago. And there were 4 order members initially who lived in different parts of North London. We got together and we decided that we would rent somewhere. And we found a suitable place. We converted it. It only took a few days. It was very small. And it was a cheap rent. It was offices in a converted church. And that worked very well for us for a while. But 2 things happened that meant that we really needed to move. One was that we filled the place up, which is great. That's success. But we only had, the reception room was about half the size of this room, so it got really packed. And we only had one main shrine room. So it was difficult to have all the activities we wanted to have. I can remember sometimes, because I used to do yoga, and the yoga class took place just before the Friends Night. And we would be sort of hustled out, and all the friends would be sort of outside, eager to get in, and it was all a bit awkward. But the other thing that happened was that the rent went up and up. In fact, the building had been developed by a building contractor, and he was very lenient. As long as we were good tenants, he wasn't too worried about the money. But then he died, and his wife was much more worried about the income. And we had to deal with some really harsh solicitors on her behalf, didn't we? Who were constantly badgering us every single year, more money, more money, more money. And we realised we would literally be priced out of London. So I have an order member friend who I met recently who's living with her sister in Luton because she told me she can no longer afford rent in London. This is London for you, isn't it? It's very difficult to live in London unless you've got a really good income. So we realised we had to move on if we were going to keep a centre in North London, because if the rent went up like that, then we had no further room for expansion. We couldn't raise any more income from classes. So luckily, we found this building, and it was only £800,000, which, you know, is pretty cheap by London standards. So we only had to raise 150,000. Well, of course, that's the kind of sum that if you think of it for yourself, you know, you just faint, don't you? But we managed it, and we managed it because we got people to commit on the level that they could. So we got a few people who had savings or good jobs to give literally tens of thousands of pounds. And then, you know, you go down, it's the fundraising pyramid. And, you know, on the lower levels, people would just do activities to raise money. They would do a sponsored walk or, you know, a jumble sale or whatever it was. But eventually we did get there. And we had this building with the enormous change in potential. We have not even begun to touch the potential that we have here for being a force for good in North London. But I always knew it was not going to be an easy transition. And funnily enough, some people who were very happy coming along to the old centre never came here at all. They never even came to have a look at what we were doing, because the old place was smaller, it was more intimate, and it was kind of comfy. We'd filled it out. And some people really like that, and people don't always like change. So I knew it was going to be quite difficult emotionally as a transition, but I also knew it was going to be very difficult financially as a transition. So although we had a mortgage has to be paid. And just to get the extra income generated that we needed for the mortgage was an uphill struggle. So it's very good that we've been able to continue here for 20 years, teaching meditation and Buddhism, expanding our Sangha in this environment. But as Ratnaprabha said, it's got to the stage where we need to move on. We need to get the mortgage finally paid off and liberate some of that potential so that we can do more to spread the Dharma around North London. So I'm very happy that we will be celebrating those 2 anniversaries, 30 years since we, as it were, re-established the North London Buddhist Centre, but it had no connection apart from being a Triratna Centre with the old one, and 20 years since not since we moved in here, but since we had the formal opening. So some of you have been here from the beginning of that process, or very near the beginning of that process. Some of you probably have come in, you know, with no idea, just thinking this has always been here and has always been functioning like this. But I hope that I will see you, if we all live long enough, on July the 9th to celebrate those anniversaries. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Kulamitra. So we're going to do an appeal to pay off the mortgage. I just want to explain why we should do this. I mean, first of all, we were given a mortgage holiday during the pandemic because our income went right down, as you can imagine, during the pandemic, because you couldn't do anything here at all. And that mortgage holiday came to an end in March last year. And it's quite a struggle now to carry on paying the mortgage. This is partly because of the effect of the pandemic, not on classes in the centre. They're doing really well. Interest in Buddhism and meditation and mindfulness is really good. But the yoga studio really suffered. Room hire really suffered. The hiring out of treatment rooms really suffered because so many things have gone online and we've lost all that income. And the outgoings for the mortgage are 5,000, nearly 5,000 a month, £4,866 per month to be exact. And that is a lot. Actually, that is a lot. If we can pay off the mortgage, we save those outgoings and we are free then to really sort of behave properly and run the centre as somewhere that can give people, I hope, low cost and even free classes and not have to worry about other sources of income. Well, I do want to see the studio get back to what it was before. So we're covering those projected losses. Without paying off the mortgage, there's a £72,000 loss predicted in the forecast for 2023. So you can see it is a serious thing that we need to do, really serious. So I'm hoping everyone will be involved. And when I say involved, I don't mean everybody is a rich person that can give us loads and loads of money, because probably most of us aren't. But to be involved in the sense of caring about this fundraising appeal and finding ways in which you can help to do it in all sorts of ways. So, for example, by all means, do donate something to help raise that 75,000. We've already raised 25,000 in preliminary donation, so that's fantastic. There's a lot of commitment there. I'm very confident that we can do it, but we can't do it just by hoping. We can only do it by being involved. So it may be that you can give something in terms of money, maybe you can give a lot in terms of money, that would be absolutely wonderful. But there may be other things you can do as well. It might be that you can do some fundraising. It might be, Serena, for example, is going to be in the bookshop selling some beautiful artistic objects. And it may be that you have something that you don't really need, but has some value, and you could sell it. You could take it to Christie's and sell it at auction, or put it on eBay, depending on what kind of thing it is, and then donate the money to the centre. So that's one example. Or you might want to put on some sort of an event. You might want to do a sponsored something or other, cycling around the coast of the country or something like that. So we can do so many things if we're freed up in that way. But we will exhaust our reserves quite soon if we don't do something about it. And we've got really fine committed people here. We've got over 20 committed, ordained teachers here that can do stuff. And we've got this great building, so it's fantastic. Yeah. So do think about that. I'm going to ask Arno Devadra to pass around pledge forms, because the idea is I'm not actually asking you to give us any money today. You can if you want to, but I'm not asking for that. I'm just asking you to fill in the pledge form and say, you might even fill it in saying, I'm going to sell my Mona Lisa. But you might fill it in by, or you might put an actual sum of money on it, whatever you like. But if you can take one of those, just take one anyway, because it's got some blurb on the back, no commitment involved. But if you can write your name on it and say, I'm hoping to raise such and such, or I'm hoping to do such and such, and then we'll get back in touch with you. So that's really would be appreciated. Yeah, so if you look downstairs, the big version of that picture, the picture is made by Arijit of a Buddha imposed on the building in the manner of a stupa. So the bit looks a bit more like a stupa with Arijit's picture of it. So do have a look at the
But the colours are very nice, pastel, very sort of soft and spreading like an incense.
Yes. And it's in the context of the blue sky, the blue sky of space, of consciousness and spaciousness. Which is lovely, I think. Anyway, so I do hope you will support the building in some way or another, whatever way works for you. So thank you very much for that. Is there anything?